let's bring it on home with good old RFK, who is, finally he's on a rehab tour after his anti-Semitic stuff that he had to go through. Jamie, put up that thing on the big board about how the Jews run everything, but then they, but they have to defer to other Jews, and that there's worker Jews, and then there's the Queen Jew, and then they all live in a hive. Bring up that article I smoked. All right. So this is Jesse Watters. But apparently, according to Jesse Watters, Biden ordered a political hit on RFK Jr. Papao.
Joe Biden's just ordered a political hit on RFK Jr.
Dems want to end RFK Jr.'s campaign before it peters out on its own. Are they just doing him a favor?
Biden.
Look at this. The big Democratic shoe stepping on RFK, who's never held office but wants to run for president because his last name.
Who spent his...
Because I think I think the one thing we learned from Bush was, father to son. I miss that from the old monarchs.
His whole career plagiarizing the Kennedys, now wants the Kennedys silenced. RFK Jr. is saying the DNC has just fixed the primary to make it impossible for him to win.
I got news for you. No matter what the DNC does, it's impossible for him to win. Just saying.
They've made rules that if anybody campaigns in Iowa or any candidate sets foot in the state of Iowa or sets foot in the state of New Hampshire, that none of the votes that are cast for that candidate will be tallied. In other words, any delegate that I win in New Hampshire or Iowa would go instead to the president.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's weird. It's almost like, and follow me on this, it's almost as if the Democratic Party is not a public works group, but indeed a political party. And that political party, I don't know if you know this, already has someone in the White House, and that person is running again. Okay, thanks, bye.
Now they're trying to change it so that if I campaign in New Hampshire, that none of the votes cast for me in Georgia will count. I would have to win.
That's because of the order, because he's trying to jump ahead and secure some votes just to try and it's just silly. It's not going to turn into, dude, talk to Marianne Williamson. You guys could start a talk show. This is so aggravating.
80% of all of the states in order to beat President Biden, even if he only wins 20%.
Yeah, you're not going to win 80%. You aren't. You're not going to win 20%. You're not going to win 2 states, period. And the only way you can do it is you go to states where people think that in the primary, or they do caucuses, and only people who show up and caucus with the candidate are going to get that. And so you're going to try to do this end run where we'll just find a bunch of Republicans and freaks to come in and who aren't registered, and will caucus for the candidate and try to bully their way into the Democratic Party. It's effectively like the chump version of the Bernie plan.
Democrats love democracy, except you can't vote in Iowa or New Hampshire.
You can vote in Iowa and New Hampshire, but you got to do it in the order that's set if they have a primary, indeed. And they also have to recognize that you're on the ballot because you've earned the right to be there. It's a party. It's different than the presidency. Ultimately, the party gets to determine, and the party can live and die, or rise and fall, or win and fail by its choices in that regard. But the important thing is that this asshole thinks we believe he gives a shit.
RFK Jr. can shake hands, kiss babies, and hold town halls for 6 months and walk away from New Hampshire and Iowa with zilch.
Right. Like he would if he didn't do all that.
Not a single delegate.
Right. Like if he didn't do all that stuff.
The DNC's giving RFK the Bernie treatment.
No. One area is the one primary difference, and I think it's an important one, is that Bernie was never a Democrat, and after he stopped running, he went back to not being a Democrat, and he is not a Democrat now. In theory, Kennedy's been a Democrat his whole life. There's a very distinct, at the very least, RFK is at least technically a member of the party. Bernie never was.
Remember, handpicked
Member?
superdelegates, put Bernie in his place the second he became a threat to Hillary?
No, they were dealing with the fact that he had a 30% national ceiling he was never going to get above, and he's not a Democrat.
The DNC designed the system to deny insurgents a shot, and
right. They learned a very valuable lesson from the Republican Party because Trump himself was a bullshit Republican and a bullshit Democrat. Every political belief he's ever had was simply just for tax purposes or to manipulate the people that he was directly around. It's more about that you guys need to set up a better fucking firewall for people who actually pay attention to your platform.
RFK needs to swallow the sleaze or the party is going to bankrupt him.
There's some really wild things that they're now considering, including forcing me to actually pay for the primaries. And their logic is that they don't need a primary because they already have a candidate.
Right. In office.
The Democrat Party's decided it's Biden or bust, but the media is keeping their options open. Biden's poll numbers are so poor, it's forcing the press to flirt. Gavin, are you interested?
Filing deadlines haven't passed. President Biden doesn't run. Why shouldn't we consider you a likely candidate?
Well, I think the vice president is naturally the one lined up, and the filing deadlines are quickly coming to pass. And I think we need to move past this notion that he's not going to run. President Biden is going to run, and looking forward to getting him reelected. I think there's been so much wallowing in the last few months and hand-wringing in this respect, but we're gearing up for the campaign. We're looking forward to it.
But you hear these calls privately. What do you tell these donors who are wallowing in this?
Time to move on. Let's go.
Looks like Newsom's.
Right. I don't know if you... Does that sound like an adult conversation? With, obviously, an adult talking to Chuck Todd, which I guess technically not a conversation then. Good point. Oh, well.
He's a good soldier. There's a succession plan, and they say they're sticking to it.
Right. By the way, the Democratic Party is slightly different in that we do tee up a vice president to kind of be close to the presidency so that they get on-the-job training for 8 years about how to do the presidency. And then you could roll into it knowing full well what it takes and how to do it, where just to keep a continuity going. Very smart move. Whereas the Republicans, I don't know what the old plan was. Under Bush, it was just let the vice president run the presidency. But in this particular instance, from Trump on, it's just like human sacrifice. Your VP is a human sacrifice to the god of continuing to be president for life.
Kamala, for now. Dennis Kucinich, RFK Jr.'s campaign manager.
Yep. Either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Is here. Dennis, what is going on with the DNC?
Well, I can tell you what's going on with RFK Jr. And
really? Can you? Can we play the tape of him in that restaurant on the Upper West Side?
And that is that Mr. Kennedy wants to make sure that every Democrat who votes in a primary, their votes will count, that they'll be counted.
Well, I got news for you. As a party, you need a plurality argument within the party for some particular reason that we need to change horses midstream. We don't. But then this is, Kucinich and others was one of the people who were like, we need to primary Obama too. No, we fucking don't. This is childish horseshit. You want to have a primary? Have it when the person that's running has timed out and the VP isn't running. Or can't get the numbers, polling wise and decide that they're not sure about it. Like they have that option to do that. But get the fuck out of here.
And that if you win a primary, that you win the delegates. I know that sounds like a novel idea, but as Mr. Kennedy has pointed out,
we're not talking about primaries in this case. We're talking about caucuses. So you're trying to bully crowds of people into places, which again was the Bernie plan back in Iowa. It doesn't stretch out though. It doesn't, like, you get trounced in any states with real populations.
The DNC has arranged it so they can put extra delegates in, stuff the ballot box in a primary, and effectively, even if Mr. Kennedy were to get 60, 70%.
He's not going to. Look at his face. He knows that's not a possibility. It's adorable. Fuck off.
Hand the election
To the guy who's actually running the country right now,
Mr. Biden.
it's almost as if that party politics draft in behind success, as opposed to, hey, how about this? How about every 2 to 4 years, we just fuck up our lead on purpose? Ugh.
Now, you know, this is, you could call it a heads we win, tails you lose approach.
So
And,
even if Biden loses.
Dennis, you do realize who you're talking to, right? A guy who used to go down and make, like, comedically awful Chinese English, like pidgin English voices at Chinese people in Chinatown, right?
Loses the
people will buy
primary
that.
to RFK Jr., the DNC will still coronate Joe Biden the nominee?
Well, the structure is set up to do that, and one must understand that, and that's what.
Right, one must understand that, because if you're chasing farts and trying to get them back in the balloon, people aren't going to take you seriously, Dennis.
Mr. Kennedy has been pointing out. I mean, you take this simple idea that if you win New Hampshire, you should win New Hampshire, you should get the delegates. But the DNC says because Mr. Kennedy campaigns in the first in the nation state, where that's what New Hampshire's about, no, his votes won't count. I mean, what in the world's that about?
Because they're trying to reorder the states for the primaries and change that, because they've had undue influence over the years and have held back progress, specifically that they want to move it around. And so just setting up camp in the smaller states to try and get a toehold when you know you're going to lose the other big ones and use it as like just an anti-Democratic Party narrative is ass. We've been through this. We've danced this dance before.
I want everyone to think about that.
We've already thought about it. And the answer collectively is piss off.
You can win, and then they don't let your votes count.
Also, no, you can't. You're not going to win. He's not going to win. RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson are not going to win any primary states. Sorry. Not going to fucking happen. They're not quite at the point where they're, booing both of them. And it's just small crowds at this point. But no, at a certain point, there's going to be a lot of fingers flying.
I mean, this is the way that the Democratic Party is engaging in self-defeating activities.
No. The only self-defeating activity, I think, is taking RFK Jr. seriously at all.
For example, Jesse, New Hampshire has 4 electoral votes. Does anyone think that New Hampshire is going to go Democratic with these kind of shenanigans played by the DNC? Does anyone think Iowa will go Democratic when the DNC has switched from caucus to a mail-in ballot with the votes counted by a private firm hired by the state?
I mean,
Yeah, but it's audited by the state. It's not like they do it in a fucking room smoking cigarettes like they're counting fucking gambling receipts, asshole.
sound like a conspiracy theorist, Dennis.
Also, it used to be a bunch of people just shouting in a gymnasium.
I mean, we went through a whole year and a half of, every vote must count, the integrity of the election.
Right. And this way, every vote is actually counted. It's also there is no government counting for these primaries because the Democratic Party, just like the Republican Party, are private entities. They are not government bureaus. Of course it's privately counted.
And this is like Soviet Russia. Did they get...
No. They don't even bother to vote in Soviet Russia. There was never a... Oh, God.
that?
No one thinks this is like Soviet Russia, stupid.
Well, look, I'm a Democrat. Mr. Kennedy's a Democrat. We just want
citation needed.
to make sure all the Democrats who vote actually have their votes counted.
Yeah,
and this is
Republicans
really
too.
Why on September 14th, we hope to be at the DNC to make our appeal to the delegates so they understand the Rules Committee, so they understand how serious this is and how it's being viewed from outside.
No, it isn't.
The DNC, how the American people are looking at this and saying, hey, don't ruin an election just because you're afraid of one candidate. I mean, the truth is,
they're not afraid of him. They might, well, that's not fair. I think there are a section of Democrats that might be afraid that the stink of his weirdly Ashkenazi Jews and the Chinese probably got together and made this virus attitude, and his bullshit anti-vaxxer stuff would get like the stank of that on the Democratic Party in any particular electorate point and shave votes anywhere. That's a problem. The other thing is that they might be, when it comes to Marianne Williamson, they don't want to get like the hippie Looney Tune patchouli smear all over everything with this idea like, fucking Democrats are weak and vacillate on this other stuff. They just want to turn off the spigot and they're gonna, it's like gives fuel to the fire of like, they're gonna take away your gas stoves bullshit.
that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the only Democrat who would have any chance of defeating Mr. Trump in the election.
Get the fuck out of here. First of all, Gavin Newsom would kick his ass. Let's just be abundantly clear. The other thing is if it was Kamala Harris, I would vote for her as well. I'm going to vote for Joe Biden in that election, period, end of fucking story. And without any reservations, I'm fine. It's a good choice. It's a clear choice. It's very simple. And then get on with my fucking life. I don't need to white knuckle the fucking country every 2 years or every 4 years. I just need to vote and get at it. This idea we gotta like, oh Dick, every election's a tooth pull. Like, no, we have a competent dude in there who's doing his fucking best. Shut the fuck up. Get out of here. Not interested. Shoo. Like, we don't need any of this bullshit that ends up being a shoehorn for Donald Trump.
Oh, is that so? All right. Well, we might never know if this system stays in place. Dennis Kucinich, thanks for joining us on Primetime, and you have a great weekend.
Hey, Sean Hannity.
Hey, Sean Hannity.